Let me take you back to what if the only way you have an opportunity, you know what you bring to the table, you know what the situation is, but you don't know who's the core of the PM. What would be the best message to the contracting office to have them introduced to the PM?
The best message, if you only have access to the contracting team and you want to get to the cores for the messaging, the best message is to direct access model. I'd like to have a conversation to talk about our capabilities in advance of the procurement. Because once the procurement hits the street, the messaging and the control and communications get very managed. I think you will know, it's probably been your experience as well, when there's no requirement on the street, there's no RFP, no RFQ, no RFI on the street, that's the time to try to make those connections because people are much more willing to talk when there's no requirement on the street.
Welcome to the Best8a Podcast. In this episode, we talk with William Randolph, founder of micromarket.co and former SES procurement executive. Here's what he had to say.
The name is William Randolph. I'm a retired federal government contracting officer. I spent 26 years in government, worked for the Department of the Navy, the United States Marine Corps, and then the last 10 years of my career was with the Department of Homeland Security in various executive jobs. I ran teams and managed teams that did procurements. I retired in 2016, did a little bit of acquisition consulting around the Washington, D.C. metro area for about 3 years. And then in 2019, right before the pandemic, I started a training and development company called Think Acquisition, and we are focused on delivering value through experiential training in the spaces of acquisition, contracts, program management, and leadership.
What is Think Acquisition? Is to help companies?
It's a two-parter. On one side, we serve the government, so we provide training to the next generation of acquisition professionals. But about a third of our business now is we take that same knowledge set and we bring it to industry for new companies, emerging companies, and growth-minded companies that are trying to understand how acquisition works behind the curtain on the government side of it.
I'm a BD guy. What is difficult for us sometimes for 8As and for BD people for 8As is to get meetings with contracting officers and try to help them ahead of time. The usual communications that we have with contracting officers are, they tell you the basics. Contracting vehicles, set asides, sometimes you help them. But do you have any advice on how to communicate with the contracting officer?
I am a big believer that government contracting is a people business. It's a relationship business. Now, having said that, there are some strategies and tactics that I think that are necessary in order to be able to do that. Once, you have to know to thine own self be true. What are your capabilities? What do you bring to the marketplace? So the first piece is, what am I uniquely positioned to be able to deliver? That's number one. Number two is then having knowledge of your target customers. In terms of, now that you know who you are and what you do and what you sell, what do you bring to the marketplace and who do you want to serve? So you have to have some knowledge about those folks that you seek to serve. The third piece is then you have to obtain access. And I think this is focused to the area you're talking about, is the ability to get in front of those individuals to be able to tell your story. There was a movie that came out in the late, 1989 or 90 called Field of Dreams. And the premise of the movie was if the guy took one of his cornfields out in the Midwest and made a baseball diamond out of it, that the players would come out of the fields. And the tagline was, if you build it, they will come. Well, I'll tell you, that only works in the movies because in government contracting, people have to know you exist. If you build it, they just won't come. You have to let them know you exist. And that's the access piece. And then once you get the access piece, then it's the ability to deliver on your story.
You have the three things. You understand what you bring to the table, the things that you just said. You know what's going on in their world. So let's say that you know what you bring to the table, you know what the problems are, and you call and you try to talk, but the contracting officer is not an expert on data science. And how can they assess if you're an expert or not, if they're not an expert themselves?
Yeah, one of the mistakes, and I use that word intentionally, or at least one of the missteps that many small businesses or businesses trying to pursue work in the federal government do is they try to make connections with the contracting officer. I actually think the contracting officer is probably the fourth person in line that you should be trying to make contact. The first should be your small business specialist. I always believe to go to the small business specialist of the organization that you're seeking to do work with. The primary reason for that is the small business specialist, that's their job, is access. Small business access, that's what they are motivated and incentivized to provide. So that's their job. The second is that those folks know how water flows inside the organization. What organizations, what teams, what projects, what programs will actually talk to you. And they also know which ones will not respond to your email. So that's why I always say, go to the small business specialist first. Second is the core. Ask the small business specialist to get to the core, because the core the contracting officer representative cares about the solution. They actually care about the who's delivering. Does the contracting officer care about who's delivering? A little bit, but they care more about the effective turn of the acquisition process. They are much more process-oriented than outcome-oriented. If the process is good, whatever the outcome spits out, it's good. That's the typical mindset of the contracting officer. They are responsible for the process. Small business specialists are responsible for access. Core cares about the mission, and the contracting officer cares about the process. And many times people want to go talk to the contracting officer, and they don't care as much as some others about the delivery, about the mission, about what strategies and tactics. They just care that the acquisition process runs smoothly.
So first, the small business guy or woman. Second, the core or PM, I guess. And third,
Then getting to the contracting.
Okay.
And then maybe the contract specialist before the contracting officer. That's another role, because the contract specialist cares as much as well.
What's the problem for a lot of people? What's the situation is that it's easy to know who's a small business guy. It's easy to know who's the contracting officer, but it's not that easy to know who's a program manager or core. Do you have any advice for small businesses reaching out, trying to find out who is the PM or core through the contracting officer?
Yeah, I have two strategies. One, going to the small business specialist and asking the small business specialist, who buys what I sell? You're trying to make contact with the program offices. And then second, conferences, expos, industry days, those type of outreach activities, that's when the program managers and the project officers and the cores, that's their playing field. That's their game.
It happens only once in a while.
It does, but in my opinion, you have to take advantage of those opportunities, because that's where the communication is unmanaged and it's unfettered access. In any other situation, you're going to have gatekeepers all over the place that can say yay or nay to opening the gate. In these conference spaces, in these opportunities, especially the ones that are offered by the agency that you want to go work with, that's oftentimes where you have at least less controlled access to those individuals.
Let me take you back to what if the only way you have an opportunity, you know what you bring to the table, you know what the situation is, but you don't know who's the core of the PM. What would be the best message to the contracting office to have them introduced to the PM?
The best message, if you only have access to the contracting team and you want to get to the cores for the messaging, the best message is to direct access bond. I'd like to have a conversation to talk about our capabilities in advance of the procurement. Because once the procurement hits the street, the messaging and the control and communications get very managed.
Got it.
I think you will know, it's probably been your experience as well, when there's no requirement on the street, there's no RFP, no RFQ, no RFI on the street, that's the time to try to make those connections, because people are much more willing to talk when there's no requirement on the street.
A lot of 8A companies, when they respond to an RFI, what they want to do is they want to make, the procurement be set aside to 8A. What advice do you have for companies trying to do that? When you're writing an RFI, are you writing to the contracting officer? Are you writing to the PM? Are you writing to both?
Yes, you're writing to both, but I think it's sequenced. It's sequenced. And sometimes it depends on the RFI, but it's sequenced. The first response is capability. The program manager, the program office team, the core doesn't care about your certification. It's not in your small business certifications is not in their higher interest at the moment. Your contracts team will care about your certifications, okay? Because that is the how. but we don't get to the how we buy until we figure out what we buy. Lead with your capability. Once you have demonstrated and you become, the phrase I often use, you become interesting to the program office, then they'll start asking you, so how can we get to you? What are your challenges? But that's only second. If you aren't interesting first, it is a waste of time to have a how conversation if we don't understand if we don't get to a good what.
How to convince them to go 8A? Any other thought on, other than yes, we'll put our best capabilities, any other detail or elaboration on how to do it? On, hey, they need to pay for the training, go to the training, I understand.
Yeah, I think there's three things you should be thinking about. And these are breaking down the three value propositions for the 8A program. Number one is, did the organization meet their goals last year? If they didn't meet their goals last year, I would mention to them, oh, by the way, this is an opportunity for you. I don't know how well you did last year, or I know how well you did last year. If you didn't meet your goals, this is a way to help fill your bucket. That's number one, value proposition of the 8A program. Value proposition number two is the speed of execution. Many contracting organizations, they use the 8A program not because they have an overly abundant affinity for 8A program. It is the sole source contracting and the expeditious processing that comes along with it. So you're selling not only filling the buckets, but you're selling the speed that comes along with it. And then the third value proposition for the 8A program, especially in a sole source environment, is the ability to sit down and have a conversation. It's like, okay, instead of us playing what I like to call throwing paper airplanes back and forth to each other with our notes on a paper airplane, we never get to have an opportunity to have a conversation. In the 8A program, we can say, we're coming to you. Now, come to the table, let's sit down, and let's talk. So those are the three value propositions of the 8A program. And the way I would frame those is I would have answers for every one of those. That one, we can help you fill your bucket. Two, it could be expeditious contracting strategy. And number three, we can sit down and have a conversation. We don't have to play Karnak and have to read each other's mind through paper airplanes. We can sit down, have a conversation, and talk about and mature the requirements together. Those are the value propositions.
Do you think that it's a good idea to come up with a PWS as an RFI response or a statement of objectives, or that's a little bit too much?
I think that's a little bit early, but I would definitely let people know that you have the secret sauce. It's like, if I have the secret sauce, I want in the RFI process, always open the door to an invite to have a follow-on conversation. So if you think back to in your youth and you were in your dating years, you would never go to the bar, order a drink, and then have a diamond ring in your pocket and say, marry me at the bar.
That's too much.
It's too much. It's too much on the first date. It's like, can we go at dinner? Can we watch a movie? Can we see if we like each other first before the proposal of matrimony? It's the same thing in government contracting. We too often try to get a proposal of matrimony on the first date. The first date is designed to get the second date.
If the RFI is the first date, the challenge is getting enough interest for a meeting.
Yes, that's the word. You got to be interesting. You got to be interesting. I tell the story all the time. I was 13, 14 years old, and I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I want a girlfriend. It's time for me to get a girlfriend. And I was like, how do you get that? So I didn't have any sisters, so this was the closest woman in my life at the time. And I was like, how do you get a girlfriend? And her response was, be interesting. You have to be interesting. I think that message applies also to the government contracting environment. If you are interesting enough, the government will pursue you.
Do you think it's accurate to think that a way to be interesting is to talk about, have a data science requirement instead of, we have been doing data science to say what are the issues are, the problems, the hot buttons that organizations have when requiring and performing on data science requirements?
Yes, I think that's helpful. But, when we're advising and coaching clients, we always say never miss an opportunity to coach and train a little bit. If there's something that you can share, it's like, here's a piece of knowledge. It's like, government, you might not be thinking about this, but A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. It's like, this is someone that not only thinking about what our requirements are, but has additional knowledge. The government is always looking for a little bit more. in terms of knowledge, understanding, comprehension, even risk reduction, okay? Because the government is always looking for the least risky solution. So if vendors can come to the first date and saying, look, not only am I a good first date, but look, check the card, or I got a pad, I got a place to live, I got something else of value. You don't have to give them the secret sauce yet, but you have to give them something they can build interest around.
Okay, so the first date RFI, let's say that you submit, you come up with you are able to be interesting. You have a second date, and the second date, you're there, they're open to talk. I'll tell you that I have been in meetings where it's not really a communication.
Absolutely. 1 to 3. This is always my ratio. 1 to 3. No matter however long your meeting is, divide that timeline into 4. So divide by 4. One of those is designed for the company to talk about them. The other 3 sections are to prompt the government to talk about their wants, needs, hopes, dreams, and aspirations. It is not a commercial. The second meeting is not designed for a proposal of matrimony. The second meeting is designed to get the third. You take that moment when you're invited, you got 30 minutes. 7 of those minutes are for me to talk about me. The other 23, I want to prompt the government to tell me where it hurts. Where are the pains? What's the problems? What have you been working on? What are you thinking about? I want to know, because me telling the government who I am, they've heard that it's 20 more of me outside. But how many of them outside have the opportunity to get 23 minutes of, so what bothers you? What are your pain points?
Thanks for listening, and thanks to William. Goodbye.